And for the rockets, I'm going to paint the body of the rocket, just this little skinny part here with Vallejo Sky Gray. Just stipple it on very loosely. It's thinned about, a little more than 1 part water and 1 part paint. So more water than paint. Now for the warhead part, I'm going to give it I'm going to give it a fairly opaque coat of Demon Red. This is from Two Thin Coats. It's a very bright, punchy red. Kind of going for a Korean War rocket vibe, if you've ever seen those rockets that they mounted underneath, like Navy aircraft and things like that. Now I'll paint all the hardware bits with this Cerakote Silver from Two Thin Coats. I'm going to paint the tail, the thing that the warhead mounts onto, the mounting mechanism, and even these little, the ones that have little details up here like this. I'm going to just paint all of that silver. Now I'm going to take some Agrax Earthshade and just paint it over the whole thing. The idea here being, as with some of the other stuff I've done on this model, is not only to bring out shadows and, show the shape of it, but also want to make it look dirty. So I'm not too worried if it pools up. That's why I'm holding it up and straight up and down like this. I want it to flow towards the rear of the rocket. And then what I can do is check it as it's drying. And if I see anything I want to pull up, like that right there, I can do so. Is this in focus? I hope so. Sorry if my voice sounds a little scratchy. I spent the morning working in the yard, and there's always dust and pollen and stuff like that. And I just always have to clear my throat. If you ever notice little jump cuts, I'll freeze and then there'll be a jump cut, but it just kind of like seems there's like a little, just a little tiny bit of movement. It's because I had to clear my throat. So what I do when I know I've got to clear my throat is I freeze and then clear my throat and then pause a second and then get back to what I was doing and edit, I can't speak, edit it out. I just got some water on my brush and I'm just gonna go through in a couple areas like that, just thin it down. You do that before it dries. If you do it after it dries, you'll tear the skin, so to speak. And it's not unrecoverable, it's just undesirable. So you just do these like that, and when they dry, I may paint some highlights onto them. I may not. They're going to be underneath and not really a focal point. And sometimes I'm starting to learn the value of not worrying about non-focal points. All right, I'm going to paint the wing guns now. This is Cerakote Silver from Two Thin Coats. I thin it down with just a little bit of water. I'm not going to go too much detail into this because you've seen me do this many times if you've watched my videos. If not, well, then why aren't you watching my videos? But you'll see, it's simple technique. I do want to bring up that when you're painting metallics, let me restate that. When I'm painting metallics, I like to do this quick, almost dry brush method because they seem to go on better. Got this pet theory kind of, started with model making guru who brought up the idea, and I thought that makes sense, but getting the metallics in the paint, the metallic pigments aligned, is what gives a better finish. So just a little bit of water and then these quick strokes like that quite often get things like this painted quickly and metallically. Get down in there, and I'll go do the other one. Whoops, right there. Also, I'm going to base this skid plate that goes on the bottom, I guess, because one, in the lore sense, the orcs probably didn't worry about building landing gear. But two, from an engineering sense, in terms of engineering the model, I'm going to guess it made it much easier to not have to worry about landing gear. So I'm going to start off by basing this with the same Cerakote silver. I'm going to use this mithril blade also from 2 thin coats. And this is one of those examples of the brand doesn't matter. Rarely does the brand matter, unless you're trying to get a very Canon specific look. What matters here is that mithril blade is a very bright silver, while Cerakote silver is more of a steel, darker silver. So what I'm really looking for is some contrast between the two, so that when I take the next step, it will show this difference much clearer. So if you were using Leadbelcher and Stormhost silver or anything else like that, the main thing is you want a difference in the silvers. That's what matters. This same technique can be used for any colors. I think it works especially well with metallics, because it really gives them a worn appearance. I wouldn't use this if you were trying to have something look, fairly new, clean, that kind of thing. But for a worn appearance, I think this works very well. I've been pleased with it. So, but you can certainly do this with non-metallics. I did a technique similar to this quite often for aircraft. Like when I would be painting the upper surfaces, if I wanted them to be olive drab, I would give them a base coat of olive drab, and then I might go over with 3 or 4 different variations of olive drab, lighter and darker, with a sponge just randomly all over it, not to provide a chipping effect, but more to apply a random faded, worn effect, sun faded, environmentally faded, whatever fading you want. But because there was contrast, you saw the difference in the colors, but the difference wasn't so great that generally it didn't look cartoonish. I had some people who disagreed with the way I did it, would let me know in no uncertain terms in comments and messages and all of that, but I didn't worry about it. I think my favorite was when, and this happened more than once, it was the same guy. He would email me all the time, and I think it infuriated him that I never responded. But he would email me and he would go, "Hey, your model looks pretty good. Fun fact, they never looked that way in real life." So it almost became funny to me to get messages from him. I didn't let him know that, but I laughed. I'm going to go over these with Nuln Oil, and I'm not quite sure why, but the reason I like doing this method is for some reason the Nuln Oil tends to darken the darker silver but the lighter silver remains fairly bright. And so what you get is this really nice, I think it's nice, worn metal effect. Now I'm using the new Nuln Oil, the new formula Nuln Oil. I could use the old one. The difference between the two is the old formula tends to not pull away from surfaces quite as easily. It will leave more staining. And in this case, that would be appropriate. I just happened to pick the new formula because that's what I grabbed. But they do behave a little differently. Now, the reason I chose Nuln Oil and not Agrax Earthshade is because the Nuln Oil does this effect that I'm talking about of making it look more like a worn metal kind of look. And it gives me some contrast and some other things. Now, if I want to make it look dirty, then after this has dried, I can go over it with some Agrax Earthshade. And that'll add kind of a dirty look to it. Now, I'm not going to, just because it doesn't, I don't want to. It's not the look I'm going for, but after, one of the things that I sometimes do after I've done this step, and this has fully dried, 100%, it's got to be 100% dry, I'll take that lighter silver, that mithril blade or Stormhost silver, or whatever you're using, and I'll lightly dry brush back over it to brighten up edges and things like that. If that's the look you're going for, then you can do that. You know, just highlight the bolts and things like that a little bit, and make even more contrast. It's not the look I'm going for with this, so I'm not going to do it, but that's a step that I often take when using this method to paint metals. Something I realized I meant to say when I was talking about the difference between the old formula and the new formula of Nuln Oil and Citadel shades in general. The new formula acts more like contrast paint. I think what happened with Citadel when they released contrast paints, they saw how many people were using contrast paints essentially like shades and really liking the result. And I heard some creators say they would never buy shades again because they liked contrast paints so much. You know, they add a little bit of medium into them and all of a sudden they were the perfect shade. So they flow more like contrast paints than the old shades, and so I meant to mention that. I did find it ironic that people praised using the contrast paints as shades, as the perfect shade, and then when Citadel changed the formula for their shades, some of the very same people complained that they were changing formulas. It brings to mind Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Alright, this is dried, and this is why I like that metal effect. It's real simple. It's not difficult to do at all, but I've tried other techniques. I've tried to find a better technique. I mean, I'm always looking for a better mousetrap. But I really like the look of that for just beat up, worn, and aged metal. And the cool thing is you can put glazes over this and other things to kind of shift the color. And that texture, that pattern will still show through. So that's looking really good. Now, just to show a little more of the bombs, this one that I had shown earlier, I painted in that skull, and all I did was I painted it black and then used some Vallejo Sky Gray to just overbrush it. A little bit of dry brush, a little bit of overbrush, just to help the texture stand out. Nothing dramatic. This one I did more of a kind of a forest green, and you can see I painted that little thing in like that. I don't even know what that is, but I decided just to make it stand out a little bit and make it yellow, and you can see the texture and all of that. That's actually a smooth surface, but it just looks textured. And painted those wires red for no other reason than just to make them stand out. And then these two bombs, these smaller ones, I did those as kind of a blue-gray. And for this, no particular reason. Again, just decided I'll do them blue-gray. And I did a little bit of an edge highlight on that yellow part right here. And same kind of overbrush just to show some texture and just kind of make that skull pattern interesting. I'm still going to go in and paint the detonators with some kind of silver, and I'll probably just put a drop of Nolan oil on it. But I may not. I mean, it won't really, I don't think it'll detract from the look of it, of any of these if I don't. So it'll just be if I remember here in the next few minutes. So my memory is always kind of a factor in everything I do. Now, one of the things I want to do is I want to make this jet nozzle look a little heat stained and all of that. Not severely so. I know it's a stylistic approach, but oftentimes you see the very bright purple ring and then blue and then orange. And from a stylistic standpoint, I get that. That looks, cool if that's the look you're trying to achieve. But I'm not looking for stylistic on this. I'm looking for subtle, because if you do a look in some Googles for, F-18 jet nozzles, F-16 jet nozzles, F-14 jet nozzles, F-100, that's one that's got some crazy heat staining and stuff. If you look around at just real world examples, they're very rarely that dramatic. You can see some bluing and maybe some purpling and maybe something that just kind of, just nudges towards orange or brown or something, but not severely so. It's a little more subtle. So I want to try and do something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a Citadel shade called Drakenhof Nightshade. Now this is just basically a dark blue, and I'm going to work most of it off onto this palette, this dry palette here, this texture palette, And I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to start stippling on some color like that. I'm just going to do this section right here. And every now and then I'll go back, take some off. I could mix this with medium, but by just unloading most of the liquid off the brush, I can just kind of do this glazing right along here. But in looking at real world photos, I noticed that it's not necessarily a ring here and then a ring here and then a ring there. You can find it. I'm not going to say that that's not completely unrealistic. But, looking at an example, and because of the style that I'm trying to go for here, I'm going to do something that's a little more hopefully based in realism. Am I in focus there? Now I'm going to go to another shade, Druki Violet, which is, as you can probably guess by the name, it's more of a purple. Again, I'm just going to stipple this on, and if I go over some of the areas that I did in blue, that's fine. I'm trying to generally not do that, but if I do, I'm not going to sweat it. And normally I wouldn't do it, I'm not doing it in a section because that's the way I would normally do it. If I wasn't doing this for camera, I would just be rotating the thing all around, but it's easier to film it just doing it this way. So, and I suppose I could add in some Seraphim Sepia, just if I want to introduce that kind of brownish red tone, something like that. Now, if you wanted to go for a more stylistic look, you could just put rings of this around and put it in that more traditional miniature method, I guess you would say, rather than going for a realistic method. But I'll just continue stippling this on and do the blue a little bit, show you what it looks like. Now to give you a little bit of a visual comparison, this is a section that I did not do, and you see it's got that same texture on it. I think I got one spot on there, but it's got that same texture on it like this piece here. But then here's this area that I just did with the Drakenhof Nightshade and the Druchii Violet. And you can see just picking up, you know, a little bit of color. I mean, it's, when you look at it from down here, it's not a huge difference, but you just get this, I don't know, to me it just has, you know, when I look at those jet nozzles and other things like that, it's more of a heat stained look to me. And if you were doing this and you thought that it needed additional layers, this was actually 3 rounds of stippling. Stipple on both colors, let it dry. Stipple on both, let it dry. And one more time. That's 3. You probably got that. But I think that really conveys that. Now the reason I'm not putting it back here is it's just a decision. To me, this is the part that's going to heat up and make that change. This part is not. Why? I don't know. Just is. But I think it will be very visually interesting. Another thing I actually thought about, because I was considering putting in some Seraphim Sepia in the same method, and then I thought, you know what? The rest of it is going to have convey such a message of rust. I did not want this to convey rust. Just to be different. So that's what I've got on there. Now I've got to do the other sides, but I really like the way that ended up looking. That's just subtle enough. Most people wouldn't notice it, but the ones I appreciate, especially if they see my models in person, is, you know, you show somebody a model and they look at it and they go, oh, that looks cool, and then they move on. I always appreciate it when somebody looks at it and they just look at it and they go, oh, I like this, or oh, I like how you did that. It shows they actually look at it. They took some time to, it may not be the greatest thing in the world that they're looking at, but they took some time to thoroughly look at it. So this is the kind of thing that I think, you know, if somebody's looking at it, especially in person, and they go, okay, that's a different effect. How'd you do that? You know, that shows me they're looking at it. But you see that texture from that silver treatment just comes right on through. You know, this part is supposed to go under here. This is like the landing skid. And I was trying to think, how do I want to make it look like it had been painted yellow, but the yellow paint got scraped off. So I thought I would just stick it underneath, just dry fit it underneath the model, and take a look at it. And you know, now that I look at it, I kind of like just that silver like it is. Because really the best way to do it, I think, would be to use the hairspray chipping method. Put some hairspray on it, paint it with yellow, and then scrape a lot of the yellow paint off, going back from front to back like that. Actually, if it was landing, it would probably be scraped from like midpoint back, because it would come in at an angle. But our minds would think, okay, front to back. But now that I'm looking at it, I like that look. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. I've got a few other things I need to do. I need to paint these hoses here, and just look for some other details. I've already painted those right there red, and put the guns on, and I put you flip it over, I put the exhausts on like that. In the public YouTube video, there's going to be some oils applied over these, so keep in mind everything's going to have oil application. I don't think I'm going to do any chipping. I was evaluating how I wanted to do chipping, if I wanted to do chipping, and the more I look at it, the more I realize, I mean, if you really look at it, it's chipped. There's enough of that brown undercoat shining through, like along here. There's just, I mean, it's it kind of sells a chipped appearance, even though I didn't do an explicit chipping stage. So I think I'm going to leave that just like it is. Oh, I need to edge highlight this guy right here. Lots of little details on this thing, and because of the way I've been painting it, you know, I've been doing this for a month now. I estimated I've probably got at this up to this point, and I haven't even done the oils. I've probably got 100 hours in it. I've been spending a lot more time with it. Now I'm having fun with it, and I'm really liking the results. Like you'll notice, I use the yellow to really just go around and brighten up all the bolts, because once I put the oil wash around them, that contrast is really going to help. It's really going to help that out. And but I'm really liking. It's accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish. I think it's telling the story of if real orcs actually painted this, what would it look like? And in my mind, I think it's accomplishing that. You can barely see Orville's name. I knew that was going to happen, but I went ahead and put it on there anyway. Thought about putting it up here, or maybe back here, but I thought, it just looks a little contrived. So they'll just both be like that. But I like Timmy 4. Every time I look at this, I laugh, because I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but he's cross-eyed when he looks to his gun sight. That cracks me up. Makes me laugh. So yeah, this is a fun model. Well, I've got a few details to continue. I've got to glue this on, and I glue this on. I think I'm going to leave it silver too. This is kind of like, it goes on the bottom. It's kind of like an arrestor hook kind of thing. I'll probably wait until I get the model mounted up on its base to put the weapons on. I've been working on the base. I'm not going to show this. This is just some Vallejo texture paste, and I'm going to paint it brown, dry brush it. Well, I'll probably put a shade over it and then dry brush it. I'm not doing anything special with this. I'm not putting any rocks on it, anything like that. It's just going to be like that. I tried to figure out a way to see if I could make it look like ground was flying by underneath, but I didn't come up with anything that I liked. So I just left it like this. It's just texture. And I did drill some wires up in there to make sure this thing stayed on there good, because that's going to be quite a bit of weight to put on it. But I'll finish this off camera. You've seen me do bases before. There's nothing special about this, so I won't take up your time with that on this model. But this has really been a really super fun kit. And what I plan to do is, even if I don't do another video for patrons about it, because really the only thing left to do is the oils, and that's going to be the oils. I went oil, went like Tin Man there. The only thing really left to do is the oils, and that'll be on the public YouTube video. What I will do, I'll try my best to remember, is when it's done, I'll take some photos from different angles and just post those up. I may post them up on my blog, but if I don't post them on the blog, I'll definitely post them up for patrons. And if I post them on the blog, I'll let y'all know that they are available on my blog. I'm trying to remember to do that now when I finish models, to take multiple photos and put up a gallery on the blog, if people are interested. And I know not a lot of people like to read stuff, but check out my blog every now and then, because what I write about in the blog isn't always what the video is about. Like if you haven't read it, the blog entry for part 2 of the public video, where it talks about painting this like an orc, it's a story from my childhood, and just shows what a complete idiot I was, and probably still am. I started writing it, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a paragraph or two, and I kept telling the story and telling the story and telling the story, and it just got funnier and funnier to me. So I finally said, okay, that's what the blog entry is. And then you hit the conclusion, and you're like, what did I just read? I just wasted my time, but maybe it'll make you laugh. Anyway, check out the blog. You might, if reading blog entries is something you like, you might find something there that you enjoy. If not, don't worry about it. You're not going to get anything new. I do have hundreds of blog entries going back over a decade. A lot of those are aircraft stuff, but there's a lot of technique discussions, a lot of building models. There's a search box on it, so if you want to search for things, hey, go out there and search for Spitfire. You'll see you'll see lots of Spitfire stuff. But the blog is there, and it's another resource, and it's publicly available. But that goes back. It probably goes back to 2011. I'm going to be shutting down my Agape Models website in August. That actually has stuff going back to 2006, but some of it is just very old, and I'm not going to be bringing it over. But anyway, I think this will be the last Patreon video covering doing this, because I pretty much covered everything. So I hope this has been helpful in some way, and maybe shown you something that has been useful. One person told me that they really enjoyed watching when I cut the canopy open. They were like, I've always wondered how to do that, and I've been afraid to do it. And that putting the blue tack underneath, they were like, the light just went off in my head. And I'm like, cool. That's the whole point of this. If I can give you an idea that you can make use of, that's very important. And I'm glad that process takes place. So anyway, as always, thank you for being a patron. Thank you for putting up with my stumbling and bumbling and nonsense and jumping around and really long videos. I'm grateful. I really am grateful. And you know, I say it, but I really mean it. And this model is really, really bringing that home, that, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And I'm really starting to see how for a while I had been going wrong, because I was trying so hard to be something I wasn't, and trying to get stuff out on a schedule that just wasn't realistic. And when I just slow down and have fun and do the kind of, somebody was very kind the other day and said some very kind words about my skills. And I said, look, I'm not a skilled modeler. I'm persistent. I think there's a lot of value in persistence. Just keep digging on it until you get it looking like you want. And it's proven to be very, very fun to get back to doing that. So if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.